Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So today I was on Instagram and I follow Robert Perkins. You know, he's the one who used to go by the name of the nigga with the tattoos and then the revolutionary with the tattoos. So I follow him on Instagram, and for a while I've been following his YouTube channel. There are points that I agree with him on and points that I disagree with him on. And for this video, I'm going to talk about something that I disagree with him on, and that's this issue of voting rights, and voting, and how do we affect change in society. So I've checked out his page on Instagram. But before I get into that, I just want to shout out a couple of people that are tuning in. Shout out to Hollow Ninja 10. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for everybody that's tuning in right now. This is going to be a very short video because, again, I have somewhere I have to go. I'm on business travel right now. Oh, Rap 8385 said they like my shirt. Yeah, for those of you who can't see it, yeah, it's a nice shirt. My lady got it for me. But yeah, so I want to just talk about this. So I was on Instagram. I saw, the brother with the tattoos, AKA Robert Perkins. He posted something talking about how basically, discrediting this idea that votes matter and stuff like that. So he had this image of Khalid Muhammad. You know that image where Khalid Muhammad is given the gas face, has that expression like he's perturbed or irritated about something. And the caption says something about how it said, when black people claim that voting is the only way to change the system. So it's basically saying that he gets pissed off when black people say that kind of stuff. And then Robert Perkins has something about how, basically saying that voting is not going to change the corruption in the system and this and that. And basically, I responded to his post on Instagram by saying, that's the expression that I have when black people say that our votes don't matter. So I was basically flipping, that image to basically say when people say that our votes don't matter, I get pissed off. And then in response to that, he basically said, well, give me an example of voting mattering as far as equal treatment and liberation is concerned. And so, I went on to respond basically saying that I'm going to do a YouTube video just explaining, my position, like explaining how votes do matter and how votes have improved the condition of black people. And so that's what I'm going to do right now in this video. I'm just going to explain why our vote matters and why, I disagree with people like Robert Perkins who downplay the significance of the vote. Here you have this man, Robert Perkins, with tens of thousands of subscribers, and he's telling these people basically that your vote doesn't matter. And by doing so, this man is doing nothing but promoting apathy in the black community. You know, as far as I can tell, I'm not aware of him organizing any kind of protest or anything to that effect. And I understand that that's not the only way that you can bring about change and stuff like that. But as far as I can tell, he's not about organizing or anything like that. He's more about complaining. And I think that we need something more than just complaints to affect change. And instead of mobilizing that audience, instead of organizing that audience, instead of encouraging that audience to be engaged in the political process, this man basically promotes apathy by telling people your votes basically don't count and they don't matter, and basically suggesting that there's nothing you can do to change this system. That's basically what he's suggesting, that there's nothing that can be done to change the system. He doesn't offer any kind of practical advice on how to change the system. And basically, it reminds me of something that the chairman of the NAACP emphasized. He said, don't agonize, organize. And too often, people here on YouTube love to agonize over the condition of our people. They love to complain about it, but they don't want to do anything to improve the condition of our people. Even if you don't believe in voting or anything like that, What else are you doing? What other kind of strategy do you have to affect change in society besides complaining? What have you done to mobilize people, to organize people, or do anything at all to affect change? That's the question that I have for these people that want to downplay the significance of voting. So he said, well, give me an example of how voting mattered in terms of equal treatment and liberation is concerned. And I can just provide basic examples. I mean, he raises that question as if that's some kind of profound, deep question when it's really not. All we have to do is look at civil rights legislation that has been passed as a result of the actions of politicians. You know, obviously the politicians made certain decisions as a result of pressure from protests, as a result of the movement uh, demanding certain things of elected officials. But if it wasn't for those elected officials, we wouldn't have a Civil Rights Act. We wouldn't have a Voting Rights Act. We wouldn't have a Fair Housing Act. We wouldn't have Section 1981 and Section 1983 and Section 1985. We wouldn't have basic rights. Even if you look at the amendments to the Constitution, you know, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, you know, the 13th Amendment outlawed slavery. The 14th Amendment guaranteed equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment gave people the right to vote. All of these are laws enacted by elected officials. And even if you look in modern times with like the Fair Sentencing Act, these are laws that help equalize things in society. Of course, this society is far from being an egalitarian and fair and completely just and equal society, but we have come a long way as a result of certain laws as the Civil Rights Act. As you all know, we lived under Jim Crow. Many of our parents and grandparents actually experienced segregation in this society, where they had the no colored signs up, where black people were forced to sit in the back of the bus, where black people couldn't even go to certain restaurants, black people couldn't even sit at lunch counters. They didn't have those basic rights. We didn't have those kind of rights. But because of laws that are in place, laws enacted by politicians, we saw an end to legalize Jim Crow in this society because of those laws that were enacted by politicians. And obviously because of a movement that was massive, you know, the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. Because of those movements, we've seen advancements in our condition as a people. So, I mean, those things alone answer that very simple question that this guy was asking. All of those legal rights that we have in effect, you know, helped bring about more equal treatment in society. So for someone to downplay the significance of the vote is for someone to be completely ignorant to the facts. Those civil rights, you know, made it possible for us to be liberated to a degree from Jim Crow. You know, as bad as things are in this society, they're not anything like what our parents and grandparents experienced. They're not anything like what our ancestors experienced when they were brought on the shores of America in chains and shackles as slaves, as property. And for us to pretend like the conditions are the same is to do a disservice to our ancestors and our elders. It is to downplay the significance of their struggle and of their accomplishments. So I just think that it is idiotic for someone to suggest that voting doesn't have an impact on equal treatment or liberation of black people in this society. When you have all these countless examples, we have all of these rights in this society as a result of laws enacted by elected officials. So to downplay the significance of the vote is just to ignore reality. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Um, Another thing is this, you know, I talked about this, you know, I mentioned this when I was responding to him. I said, all we have to do is look at the difference between the Obama administration and the Trump administration, and you will see clearly how important elections are. Under Obama, I mean, you have all these people that say Obama did nothing for black people, but under Obama, he fought to protect affirmative action. Under Obama, he fought to protect our voting rights. Under Obama, he helped enact the Fair Sentencing Act, enacted reduce the sentencing disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine, a disparity that resulted in a disproportionate number of black people being incarcerated. It resulted in the mass incarceration problem in the black community. Under Obama, many police departments were investigated for their discriminatory policing practices, investigated for police brutality. And as a result of those investigations, the Obama administration entered several consent decrees with several police departments, including Baltimore and Ferguson. And under Obama, you had other accomplishments. I mean, you have the Affordable Care Act, the act that helped ensure many Americans, including many black people, disproportionate numbers of black people who did not have health insurance, who were denied health insurance because of pre-existing conditions. People who were denied health insurance simply because they couldn't afford to pay for health insurance. So you look at those things. You look at the Brothers Keeper program, a program that benefited black youth, black young men in particular. You look at that, and you will see the difference between the Obama administration and the Trump administration. When you look at the appointments to the Supreme Court, when you look at Obama appointing Justice Sotomayor, and you look at her rulings on cases that matter to black people, whether we're talking about voting rights or affirmative action, you will see how important elections are. You will see it clearly, clear as day, just how important elections are. And I find it odd that these same people that are telling black people that elections don't matter, that are promoting this black apathy, these are the same people that want to complain about Donald Trump doing X, Y, and Z. And now when we look at what Donald Trump is doing, we're looking at an administration that basically co-signed white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia. When they went on that rampage, when you had that white supremacist use his car to ram into a crowd of people, killing one person. When you had them fighting people, brutalizing people and shooting at people. Donald Trump described some of those protesters as fine people. He basically compared those who were fighting against fascism and racism to those who were racist and those who are white supremacists, basically saying they're one and the same. If that doesn't show a difference in, how important elections are, I don't know what else will. Here you have a man that basically co-signed these white supremacists, pandered to these white supremacists. A man that retweets white supremacist talking points on his Twitter account. A man that talks about how he doesn't want to use the Justice Department to fight against police brutality. Police brutality isn't even on the radar screen for this Trump administration. They view that as a local issue, as a non-issue, even though police brutality occurs all around this country. But yet and still you have people like this Robert Perkins suggesting that the vote doesn't matter. You have this Trump administration that is trying to dismantle affirmative action. They already talked about using the Justice Department to fight affirmative action. They've talked about how they want to no longer encourage universities to promote diversity through affirmative action programs. They're talking about, the person that they have nominated for the Supreme Court is somebody that is hostile to affirmative action. If Trump has his way, we will see the end of affirmative action. Here's a Trump administration where you have Trump basically co-signing the stop and frisk program that was set up in New York City. a program that's stopped and harassed innocent black people simply because they were black, a program that criminalized an entire community because of the color of their skin, where most of the people who were stopped did not have illegal weapons or drugs on them. Most of the people who were stopped and harassed by those police in New York City were African American, innocent people. But as far as Trump is concerned, that's fine. He has no problem with that. And this man has actually co signed racial profiling during his campaign. He co signed it. Here is a man who set up a sham voter fraud commission that it was designed to suppress black voters and Latino voters and many other voters who don't vote for Republicans. You can't compare that to Obama actually fighting to protect voting rights. So anybody that tells you that voting doesn't matter, that's someone who is uninformed. And then, in response to that, like when I said, well, the difference between Obama and the Trump administration is a prime example of how important your vote actually is. This guy basically goes on to say, well, you didn't vote for the president. The American people don't vote for the president. The electoral college selects the president. And you hear this talk all the time. I mean, anybody that studied basic civics, I mean, this is stuff you learn in grade school. Of course, the president is directly elected by the electors in the electoral college. Everybody knows this. But those electors vote in a way that's consistent with the state that they represent. Rarely do they vote contrary to the state or region that they represent. And these same people that want to say, well, we didn't actually vote for Donald Trump and this and that, or we didn't vote for president because the electors voted for him, they can't point out any example during this past election where these electors voted contrary to the vote of the state that they represent or the region that they represent. They can't point that out. But yet they want to dismiss this idea of us voting in these presidential elections. They want to downplay it and basically suggest that we're helpless, that we're like, they take on this defeatist type of mentality that basically says that we're, somebody else controls everything and we might as well not even try to do anything to decide who's going to be elected. I mean, that is a weak posture to have. That is a defeatist attitude to have. That is not the attitude that we need in order to affect change in our community. Our ancestors and our elders understood the importance of the vote. That's why they fought so hard for it. They didn't fight so hard just so that they could simply vote. They fought because they knew that once they had the power to vote, they had the power to change public policy. And we saw that once African Americans were able to vote, we saw the end of Jim Crow because they were able to vote out those white supremacists that held power. If our vote did not matter, why did the KKK terrorize the black community to prevent black people from voting? Why did the white supremacists try to do everything in their power to prevent us from voting? And why do they continue to fight to suppress the black vote today if our vote doesn't matter? Why did they go to all the way to the Supreme Court in Shelby County versus Holder if our vote didn't matter in order to gut the Voting Rights Act? If it didn't matter, they wouldn't care if black people voted. They wouldn't fight to suppress the black vote if our vote didn't matter. And it's a shame that you have black people with these large audience promoting this idea that somehow our vote does not matter. I think that that's irresponsible. I think it's reckless. And I just think that it's uninformed. And unfortunately, people don't do their own homework and their own research, and they just go with whatever they're being told. So that's one thing. And, the other thing I'll say is this, man. Even if you were to believe this conspiracy mumbo jumbo that basically says we don't decide who the president is and all this and that, the fact of the matter is when you look at government in terms of your House of Representatives and your Senate, we directly elect those officials. So what is your excuse for not voting for your congressman or for your senator? What's your excuse for that? What's your excuse for not voting for your governor and for your state's attorney and for your mayor and your school board? What's your excuse for that? These people are making policies that affect our lives. Only a fool would sit back and say, well, I'm not going to vote for those positions because, you know, I'm helpless and, you know, the man has control over everything and my vote doesn't matter. When people talk like that, they're basically helping to suppress the black vote. They're undermining black political power. You have people that fight to chip away at black political power by, for instance, setting up at large voting systems to dilute black political strength and to maintain white power, white political power. But yet you have people saying, well, our vote doesn't matter. If our vote doesn't matter, these people would not fight so hard to prevent us from exercising our right to vote. But yet you have these people that want to dismiss this. You know, these same people that will complain about the prosecution not going after these police that engage in police brutality. These same people don't realize that we elect the prosecutors in our cities. We have the power to elect the state's attorney or the DA in our cities and stuff to make sure that we have somebody in place that values our lives, that understands the importance of fighting against police brutality. We have the power to make decisions like that. We have the power to elect a school board that cares about our children, that is committed to improving the quality of our children's education. We have the power to elect a mayor that understands the importance of creating safe and prosperous communities. But when you throw your hands up in the air and basically say there's nothing that we can do to affect change in our society, then you become a slave, you become a victim, you become helpless, you become prey. And when you're not at the table to negotiate, and one way to get at the table is through the voting process, then you are on the menu. When you don't vote, you don't count, period. And it's just unfortunate that you have these talking heads on YouTube and on social media basically encouraging black people not to vote, man. And I just think it's a disgrace. Let me see how much time I have. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get going. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna try to look at some of your comments real quick before I go. Yeah, but I really do have to go so I could be on time for this thing. Um, you know what I'm going to do? I'm probably going to go through these comments afterwards, and then I may do a follow up live stream tonight, and I'll respond to you all directly about all of these issues. You know, these same people, and before I close out, I just want to say this, man. A lot of these people that basically encourage black people not to vote, you know, they all profess to admire people like Malcolm X. They all profess to admire the Black Panther Party, not realizing that Malcolm X said the ballot or the bullet. Go read that speech. Go listen to that speech on YouTube, and you will understand that Brother Malcolm knew the importance of the vote. Study the Black Panther Party, and you will understand that the Black Panther Party understood the importance of the vote. The chairman of the Black Panther Party, Bobby Seale, actually ran for mayor of Oakland. Elaine Brown ran for various positions in government. You have one of the Black Panthers who's an elected official today in Congress, Bobby Rush, who represents the people in Chicago. The Panthers knew the importance of the vote. These same people that talk about how the vote doesn't matter, they admire, you know, the brother Stokely Carmichael, and I admire the brother too. But the brother Stokely Carmichael understood the importance of the vote. He understood it very well when he helped set up the Black Panther Party. when he organized black people in the South to form their own political party and run their own candidates for office. That brother understood the importance of the vote. But yet you have these pseudo revolutionaries nowadays that want to downplay the significance of the vote. And let me be perfectly clear. I'm not saying that the vote is the end all be all, that it's going to solve all of our problems. All we have to do is go to vote and stuff like that. The vote is just one tiny piece of the puzzle. It's one weapon in our arsenal for black liberation. There are other things that we can do to affect change as well, but voting is a key component that we should not throw away in the trash after our ancestors fought and died for that right. It's just one piece. Other pieces include protests. Other pieces include organization. Other pieces include lobbying and pushing for legislation. Other pieces include litigation, boycotts. There are all kinds of things that we can do in this society. The problem is we are more content complaining about problems instead of actually trying to solve problems. We're more content with black power entertainers than we are with black actual leaders who are actually doing something, who are actually sitting in Congress trying to enact laws to make a difference in our lives, or who are actually mayors of city like the brother Raz Baraka, doing all kinds of great things in Newark. We would rather talk about problems instead of solve problems. But yeah, so later on tonight, I'm gonna look at these live stream comments, and I'm gonna come back, and respond to some of the things that you all said, and I'm gonna respond to you all live. So y'all look out for that. It's gonna be a part two to this video. I just have to go. I gotta get ready for this reception, another reception, to close out my business here in San Antonio. But with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you, and look out for my next live stream tonight. Peace.